This is without a doubt one of the most important analytical videos for understanding what happened to Russia. Ukraine has repeatedly demonstrated its ability to reach deep targets within Russian territory with increasing precision. Oil refineries in Moscow were hit in large-scale attacks, generating columns of black smoke visible over the capital and spreading oily residue in residential areas. In St. Petersburg, oil terminals and port facilities, including areas near the Kronstadt naval base, have suffered damage. During periods of high political visibility, such as economic and international forums. In Crimea, repeated strikes against electrical substations, fuel depots, and logistical hubs have caused prolonged blackouts as well as severe fuel shortages, leading local authorities to declare a state of emergency in parts of the territory. These accumulated successes put direct pressure on the Kremlin. Vladimir Putin had to publicly acknowledge the problems with domestic fuel supply and authorize the use of strategic energy reserves to try to stabilize the supply in dozens of Russian regions and in Crimea itself, which is under occupation. Restrictions on gasoline sales were imposed in more than 40 regions, and the Russian government began closely monitoring the impact of losses in the production of petroleum products. Russian energy resources are the main engine that keeps the war machine running. Revenues from oil and gas exports finance a large part of the military budget, the payment of troops, the acquisition of ammunition, and the maintenance of equipment. Even under heavy Western sanctions, Russia manages to export significant volumes of crude oil and petroleum products thanks to a network of tankers known as the Shadow Fleet or Ghost Fleet. These ships, often old, with flags of convenience and identification systems turned off, transport the product to buyers in Asia and other markets, generating tens and tens of billions of dollars annually that sustain Putin's invasion effort. Inside occupied Crimea, the role of these ships is even more direct. They supply Russian forces with gasoline, diesel, and aviation kerosene needed for armored vehicles, artillery, power generators, and Black Sea Fleet operations. Without this constant flow, the ability to sustain a prolonged, robust military presence on the peninsula is compromised, especially when land routes through the isthmus are also directly interdicted. It was exactly this supply chain that Ukraine targeted on the night of July 6th to 7th, that is, in the early hours of this Tuesday. Important and precise attacks took place. The Kairos unit, part of the 414th Separate Brigade, Magyar's Birds, of Ukraine's unmanned systems forces, carried out significant drone attacks in the Sea of Azov. If you want access to more in-depth analysis and exclusive content, such as videos, shorts, and live streams that are not released to the public, become an exclusive channel member for only 7 Rs per month. The 8 oil tankers hit belonged to Russia's Shadow Fleet and were under international sanctions. Each of them has an approximate capacity of 7,000 deadweight tons, is about 140 meters long, and was built between 2006 and 2012. Identified ships include Venus, 3 Sonar, 1 Sonar 17 Klemena, Tete, Alexei, Savrasov, and Penelope. The 8th is Venus, Sanar 1, 7, Klemena, Tete, Alexei, Savrasov, and Penelope. The 8th oil tanker was still in the process of being identified at the time this video was being produced. In addition to the 8 oil tankers, Ukrainian drones also hit a dry cargo ship and a ferry in the same area. The commander of the Unmanned Systems Forces, Robert Brovide, known as Robert Magyar, stated that the Shadow Fleet is ceasing its activities and that the battle for fuel supply in Crimea in the Sea of Azov continues. In another message, he stated, "We will resist, Moscow will fall, we will feed and rebuild Crimea." The operation was not limited to the ships. On the same night, Ukrainian forces hit 58 military targets in the rear areas of Russian troops in occupied territories. In Crimea, for example, once again, electricity supply facilities and logistics systems were damaged, adding to a broader campaign that had already compromised dozens of substations and fuel depots on the peninsula. The immediate impact is the disruption of fuel flow to Russian forces in Crimea, at a time when the territory is already facing rationing and restrictions on the sale of petroleum products. Each tanker was carrying a volume equivalent to about 200 railroad tank cars, representing a significant logistical loss in a single night. Russia's shadow fleet, which consists of more than 1,000 to 1,500 vessels, according to Western estimates, is becoming increasingly vulnerable. As time goes on, Ukraine demonstrates the ability to locate and attack it both in coastal waters and on more distant routes. From a military standpoint, the operation illustrates the growing integration between long-range drone strikes and unmanned operations and systems in the maritime environment. The precision required to hit multiple moving ships in the Sea of Azov, combined with the ability to simultaneously strike land targets in the rear, shows the technical and doctrinal evolution. The absence of reported civilian casualties reinforces that it was specifically aimed at military and logistical assets. This action adds to a series of previous strikes against the Shadow Fleet in other regions, including attacks in the Black Sea and the Mediterranean. The pattern reveals a consistent Ukrainian strategy of degrading Russian economic and logistical capabilities in parallel with operations on the battlefield. And it wasn't just these attacks by Ukraine, there were many more. But to watch the full video of this analysis, join our members and become a channel member. For just 7 rays and 99 cents a month, just click the join button here. Now I want to hear from you. In your opinion, are these attacks against the Shadow Fleet in the Sea of Azov more important for Ukraine than the strikes on oil refineries inside Russia? Why? Your perspective helps enrich our discussion. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos.